Perhaps you've dreamed of a trip to the Far East, a land of mystery, history, and wisdom. Forget what the Travel Channel tells you about China and listen to what real China is like. Enjoy that pancake on your plate now before his tour begins, titled Stinky Tofu.
Warning! The program that you're about to see could have unpleasant side effects, including loss of appetite and nausea. What's presented here is one experience of China, and should not dissuade, deter, or discourage you from flying 16 hours to have your own miserable experience. If you have a delicate constitution at all, it may be advisable to bow out now, because your sensory overload begins in 3, 2, 1. Does anyone know the population of China?
1 billion.
A billion.
Wow.
Do you want to know what China sounds like? Imagine the sound of a billion people chewing with their mouths open.
Oh, God.
The sound of hungry mouths violently slurping noodle soup in, multiplied by a billion! What that means is that there's never a quiet moment in China. At any given moment, a few 100 million Chinese are chewing with their mouths open. I was in my hotel and I could hear people chewing in the restaurant 5 floors below. Went to a national park. There were no birds chirping. There were no squirrels frolicking, just chewing! But there are other wondrous sounds of the Far East. Did you know that in preparation for the Beijing Olympics, the government instituted a series of ad campaigns and new regulations to prevent people in Beijing from spitting in public?
Oh, yeah.
Now you and I, as Westerners, find spitting in public offensive. It's disgusting. And in other countries like Singapore, they have laws against it. You can go to jail. But in some Asian cultures, it's a national pastime. And it's really disconcerting to walk down the street and see an old woman, it could be your grandmother, if you're Asian, I suppose, hearing her clear her sinuses in preparation for a juicy public expectorant. For me, it's the snorting that precedes expectorating that upsets. It's a very visceral experience for me, and especially during a meal like breakfast, for example. If you like food with a crunchy texture like I do, China is not for you. I like crunchy. I like biting into something, hearing a loud crunch, grinding the food into a paste, getting it to a nice texture and squeezing the flavor out of it. I've never done well with anything runny or gelatinous. So if you're like me, you won't like China, because they don't do crunchy. I saw a translation, I think it was a few years ago, by Mao Zedong, and it went something like this. Chinese, crunchy food is enemy of the Chinese people. There shall be no crunchy food. All vegetables will be stir-fried or boiled until gelatinous. And all food will be salty. Like the tales we humans shed so long ago. I suspect it's possible at some point the Chinese people will evolve without teeth. I mean, who needs them when you've got food this mushy? Ironically, that may solve the loud chewing problem to some degree. But I don't want you to get the wrong idea. China isn't all bad. It does have some redeeming features, like freedom from many social constraints and silly rules. In the West, we're handcuffed by some very silly rules. Some of us, taking smoking for example, some of us like to smoke. The sweet, pungent aroma of pipe tobacco, or the cooling sensation of a menthol as it courses over your tongue and into your lungs. I'm told it's quite euphoric. In America, we can't just smoke anywhere. We have these crazy rules. No smoking in the airport. No smoking during your Toastmaster speech. No smoking at first watch. In China, there are no rules. You want to enjoy the acrid scent of a fat Cuban cigar in a room with you and 12 newborns? Go ahead! Visiting your dad in a senior's home where the walls are lined with explosive oxygen tanks? Light her up! Filling up your car at the Chevron station with flammable gasoline? Take out that Marlboro and taste the freedom. Speaking of taste, what does China taste like? Well, I won't coddle or cosset you. You and I have a spice rack filled with complex culinary combinations. We have oregano and rosemary and mint and coriander, etc. From what I can tell, the Chinese only have chili peppers and soy sauce. And for those of us that crave freshly baked carbs, China is like an extended stay in a weight loss clinic. And I've been thinking about opening one over there. Maybe Joan, you'll help me out. You could open one. Instead of taking your vacation, go to China for 2 weeks and lose 20 pounds. But I love the smell of those carbs baking in the oven. And unfortunately, I can never smell that smell again. You see, my olfactory senses were scarred permanently by something called stinky tofu. The story of stinky tofu dates back to the Qing dynasty, and I suspect the tofu does as well. Regular, innocent, law-abiding tofu is scooped up and put in a brine made of meat, milk, vegetables, and herbs. And it's left there for weeks, months, until it's really, really disgusting. Then it's pan-fried and served up to you as a delicacy. It's difficult to describe the sensation of this mess as it hits your nose. The closest approximation I've been able to come up with is hot, rotting garbage on a summer Florida day. You may be chewing blueberry gum as you walk by a hawker selling stinky tofu, but all you'll be tasting is stinky tofu. China is so unique. I highly recommend you go and see it. Just bring earplugs, nose plugs, and an ample supply of your own food. Have a great trip. Namaste.